Hi everyone, I'm KLMeri.
And I'm Soda.
Soda and I are back with another podcast. Today we are going to talk about the original series top 10 one episode characters.
Yeah.
Well, really, our rankings of what we think are the top 10 one episode characters. So I can just say right now, Soda, I'm so excited to hear your list. I know that when I was putting together my list a few days ago, well, I pulled up the whole episode, all the episodes, like a list of them, and I went through and I went, okay, who do I remember? That's kind of number
Exactly.
one. Like, who stays with you?
Exactly.
And
I did
so,
the same thing.
but then I had to double check myself and go, okay, did this character appear in more than one episode? Because obviously that's our first criteria, right? Is it appears in one episode only in the original series.
Yeah, but I want to clarify that when I thought about it, I just said, okay, even if they appeared in only one episode, if they appeared in the movies too, I don't count them because they're not just one episode.
Uh-oh, that's where I differ. So I think our lists are going to be interesting.
They are, and I'm wondering if you're going to guess my number one. I don't think you would. I don't think you would.
I might. I don't know. I feel like we're going to be similar on some. So, like I said, criteria is appears in like one episode of the original series. Additional caveat to that for Soda is doesn't appear in the films.
Yeah.
I made a couple of other points for myself because when I started thinking about it, I'm like, well, this encompasses strange aliens, creatures, villains, good guys, like pretty much all these influx of characters essentially in the episodes. So I had to make a list to like
Yeah.
check off some boxes like I do. Um,
And honestly, I have another caveat this, which is I also kind of only went with humans or humanoid aliens
mm-hmm.
just because we had the entire, top 10 list of,
Yeah.
of aliens. And I felt I don't want to repeat myself. So I'm going to stick to either aliens or humanoid aliens.
Okay. Mine's pretty similar. Mine was a sentient or self aware being that has to have a meaningful interaction with at least one crew member. By
Hmm.
meaningful interaction, let me give you an example of one that I don't consider meaningful. So I love Gertrude, the sentient plant.
Yeah,
But Gertrude is not an episode character in that she does more than just be cute
yeah,
and shrill.
exactly. Yeah,
Um, Another example would be like Kirk's brother or his sister-in-law in Operation Annihilate. Like one, his brother is just,
yeah,
Shatner laying on the floor. And then
yeah.
his sister-in-law is like she has lines. She's, the one who's explaining like what happened on Deneva, but at the same time, is that really how meaningful is that? Um,
You see, I just they had such a meaningless role that I barely even remember they're there. I did
exactly,
not
yeah.
remember that.
Yeah, and then my next one was leaves a lasting impression. So this is it could leave a lasting impression with the fandom, or it in a sense like became popular with the fandom, even though it was like a one episode appearance.
Yeah.
Um, and then the last one was I was just like, would I invite them to dinner so I could like find out more about them, more about their life or their tragic backstory.
You see, I did not include this rule because, well, I mean, there are some people there that I would definitely not want to have dinner with. I would not want to have dinner with like half of this list. But they are interesting, so I feel like, I don't want to discount them. They are very interesting
Yeah.
characters. I just would not have dinner with them.
Well, that helped me sort out like who was in my top versus like the top five versus the lower five.
I see.
Because not everybody checked those boxes that's on my list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm really excited. What's your number 10?
My number 10 is I have a feeling that he may be on your list, but maybe even higher. My number 10 is Commander Matthew Decker from the Doomsday Machine.
Oh my gosh, yes, he's on my list. He's
I
not.
knew it.
He's
Yeah,
yeah. He's on my list.
yeah. He's an interesting character. I feel like he's not that interesting as a character as in like we see his type of character several times, like the other captain, or in this case a commodore, who's been through something, who's been rescued, who is very obsessive about his crew. I feel like we get this type of character more than once, but he stands out in that his actor is very, very good. He really sells the performance and he sticks in your mind.
Yeah.
So he's my number 10 because I don't feel like he's unique as a character, but I feel he's the one that makes the most impression out of all of them.
I agree. I think when you first meet his character, you kind of you understand that he's deeply upset. He's full of survivor's guilt, right?
Yeah.
He thought he would be like the captain stays behind on the ship, right? He thought he was doing his what he's supposed to do. Captain goes down with the ship. And instead when he beamed his people to the planet got eaten in front
Yeah.
of him. So, he's like got some serious guilt going on. But you don't quite realize just how insane he is. And
Yeah.
it builds up over the episode. So I agree. He's actually number 8 on my list. Because of the same reasons. Like you said, we see that type of character before, you know, captain really cares about his crew, is somehow obsessed with something gone wrong, but at the same time this actor really pulls it off. I've always remembered Matt Decker.
Exactly. You always remember him because he was so well written, because his actor really really sells it.
Yeah. Okay, so my number 10 is for a very similar reason, but he's kind of like the first of his kind, and that is Commander Kor from the Errand of Mercy. So he's really like the first Klingon commander that we get to see. I did not know this, but the director of the episode knew the actor and thought he would be a perfect fit for the role. And so I think that's true because we learned so much about what Klingon philosophy is in that single episode because the actor is so like into his role. His arrogance is bar none. Only Kirk could be just as arrogant in some scenes in that episode. But he's got the Klingon arrogance. He basically introduces us to what is a Klingon. He always stood out in my mind for that reason. I also did not know this, but they intended to bring Kor back in Day of the Dove, and they wanted that actor to come back and reprise Commander Kor instead of having this new Klingon called Kang, which is where they ended up landing. And the actor was very upset about it because he was so excited to be Kor again, and it just didn't work out for some reason. The thing about Kor is he does come back in like Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think they put him in an episode of the animated series. I don't know what it is, but this Klingon in particular, we see a number of Klingons in the original series, definitely in the films, but this Klingon, for me, has always stood out above the others.
I think it's because he has a very good chemistry with Shatner's Kirk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That rivalry that, like, they truly
play
are
off
enemies.
each other very well.
Yeah, they truly are like enemies on opposite sides. But at the same time, they're so similar. I'm just like, you both are just so arrogant.
Exactly.
And neither of you will yield, and you both have good arguments, and your ways of life are just so different, and you're not willing to compromise. I was just, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Commander Kor, number 10.
That's a good choice. I have to admit, I don't have a single Klingon on my list, which is interesting.
He was the only Klingon on my list for that reason.
Nice. Well, my number nine. My number nine is Trelane from the Squire of Gothas.
Wow.
Is he on your list too?
He is actually tied in my number 9.
Nice. Yeah, so Trelane is he's a unique character. Um, we see a few all powerful creatures in Star Trek, right? But he's unique in that most of the very powerful creatures we meet are also very sophisticated. They're very advanced. They're usually very peaceful. Trelane is like a child with unimaginable powers. He treats people like playthings, but he's like it's not in a malicious way. He's a child essentially. He doesn't understand the consequences of his actions. Um, and to top it off, to top it all off, he's also kind of like the prototype of the Q species that later becomes a staple of Star Trek.
Yeah. All
Yeah,
those reasons.
yeah.
All those reasons I love Trelane. I don't think a lot of people do. I mean, as far as villains go, they're like, oh, he's just a whiny kid causing a bunch of problems. And I'm like, yeah, but
I think that's the beauty of him.
it is. And it's just so funny when he gets called out on the carpet by his parents.
Exactly.
Told you not to mistreat your toys. Yeah, I always agreed that he was like prototype for the Q. You know, how do you deal with being in a situation where something that powerful, but then to top it off, it's so immature that it doesn't even care what destruction it's causing or who it's harming.
Yeah, I think it's interesting specifically because he's not malicious. Like
Yeah,
there are malicious villains. He's not really a villain in that sense. Like yeah, he's the obstacle the protagonist has to get through, but he's not doing it on purpose. Like he
right,
just wants to have fun.
right. He's a kid crashing his toy action figures together,
Exactly.
and having a good old time. Yeah, I don't have many, I'd say, villains or proposed to be like the antagonist of the episode on my list. So I kind of stuck the besides Core, who I thought was like should be by himself. I kind of stuck the other two together in number 9.
Yeah.
Trelane because again he's not a villain really. He's just a being causing destruction, you know,
Yeah.
because he doesn't understand what he's doing. But then on the flip side of that, you have somebody who does it very intentionally and on purpose and really has no qualms about it, and that's Khan.
Mm,
Khan, Noonien Singh.
yeah.
It kind of goes along with our like our number 10 soda in that I thought the Trelane actor was just so like flippant and childish and laughing and giggling, like he did that so well. The I like Ricardo Montalban as Khan. I think
Yeah.
if you're going to be that type of bad guy, charming but ruthless, then the actor pulled it off very well, in my opinion. I mean, he
Yeah, I mean, I think there is no argument that Ricardo Montalban as Khan is phenomenal.
yeah,
The character, everyone remembered the character, that's why he got the movie.
yeah.
But that's also why I didn't put him on my list because he has an entire movie to shine in on top of the episode.
And I wonder if the actor hadn't done such a like mesmerizing like job in a way that people remembered him, that even given the storyline, they would have brought him back as an actual like whole plot of a movie. I don't know. I don't know that answer, but I feel like the actor being who he was had a lot to do with it.
Me too. I mean, he really was just phenomenal.
Yeah. If you're going to remember one of the villains of the original series, you're going to probably remember Khan.
Yeah.
So, for that reason, he's on my list.
Well, my number 8. I was going back and forth on my number 8 with my number 7, kind of switching them around. I think I settled finally. My number 8 is Edith Keeler, City of the Edge of Forever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Kirk has a lot of one episode love interests.
Mm-hmm.
Of all of them, Edith Keeler is probably the best.
Mm-hmm.
She is interesting, she's compelling, he's matched in every possible way. She doesn't even know who he is. And she kind of outshines him in everything. She's a good person, she's a good leader, she she's kind, she's helpful. She's basically, his match. And of course, the way the romance ends is tragic. And I think it's probably the best romance ending Kirk has, because with other women, it's either they're insane or he has to leave them for one reason or another. For her, he got to think he was willing to stay, but there was no other way. It was either her or the entire future, and he was. The choice was hard, but it wasn't hard because you don't put a person in front of the entire future, but like,
Of humanity, right?
yeah. But it was hard because he actually cared about her.
Mm-hmm. She is a very good character. I agree. She almost made my list.
Hmm.
She's an honorable mention.
All right.
Yeah. The one of the things I really liked about her, and probably that made me like her so much, was that she was ahead of her time. And
Yeah.
I've always appreciated it when, someone, particularly a woman, in a show at that time, point in time in history, they make an effort to say she may be a woman, but she's ahead of her time.
Yeah.
And like, it doesn't matter that she's a woman; she's still like an intelligent, kind humanitarian that's going to change the world if she
Exactly.
can. I think that's a great point. That's a great thing for a character. And we see a lot of other characters who are, I'd say, humanitarians in that sense, but I would agree she's like probably the best one.
Yeah. Like I said, I think she's the best love interest that Kirk. One episode love interest that Kirk gets.
It was far more romantic than most of what happened with other ones. You'll probably
Yeah.
laugh at my number 7, but
Mm. Since your number 8 is Decker, we already talked about him. What is your number 7?
oh goodness. Okay, so number 7 is a love interest of a Kirk. It's
Kirk, yeah.
it's Marlena Moreau
Oh,
from
interesting.
the Mirrorverse, Mirror episode, the Mirror Universe episode. The reason she made my list and Edith didn't is that for being in the universe that she was in, she was very ambitious in a way that she wasn't just like an ambitious woman, like Captain's woman, right?
Yeah.
She was actually very intelligent,
Yeah, she was.
and she was very observant about what was going on, which is why she kind of figured out. One, Kirk was just acting different, right? How do I put it? She was in the background, knew she was in the background, but from the background, she influenced a lot of what happened.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I give her props. She always stood out to me as like someone who was more than a captain's woman, even though that was her position on the ship. When they all return back to the Prime universe or whatever, and you see that yes, she's actually a Starfleet officer, right?
Yeah.
She's more than just that arm candy.
She's not even a yeoman, which is kind of rare.
That ruthless version of Kirk, had.
Yeah.
The other thing about her is, even though I don't think Kirk was, I think maybe he felt sorry for her, to be honest, in the way that Kirk does.
Yeah.
But I guess enough that he would mess around with her, but he has his desire overcome him more than once or twice in in
Yeah,
the show,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Probably against his better judgment. I think that Marlena actually did care about him.
yeah.
She cared about enough to save him. That just goes to show that, not everybody in the mirror universe is completely cold-blooded, calculating person who just wants to kill their superior in order to move up in rank.
I agree. I think Marlena is a very deep character, especially for the universe she's in.
And
Like,
again, just given the role that they put her in, the person who was the captain's woman, she was
yeah,
much more complex than she could have been portrayed.
yeah, exactly. I'm really happy for the way she was written. I think the actress did a wonderful job, and yeah, she was, like I said, much deeper than we would expect. Like you said, a character from her universe to be in her position.
Yeah. So what was
Yep.
your number 7?
My number 7 is Gary Mitchell
Mm.
from Where No Man Has Gone Before. Gary is again one of those characters that is kind of a prototype, like someone who's gone mad with power. But I think he's interesting for the pre-crazy, powerful god, like being character that he was. He was interesting because he was Kirk's best friend, and he gave us a bit of a window into, insight into Kirk and his past. Um, I think and he mostly is on my list because of that. Because not so much for his character alone, but because of what he can give us, in regards to Kirk himself, what we can know by him.
So I also had him as an honorable mention. Like you said, we kind of come in at a point in time where we can see there's a lot of history there.
Yeah,
Maybe had he not been given those godlike powers and been influenced by that, he it almost feels like he could have been a main cast character.
exactly.
Maybe more of a best friend to Kirk than Bones. Who knows? But you're right. He is the prototype for those godlike powers, and it is something fans have never forgotten.
Yeah,
and the show likes to sort of reprise every now and then, or I mean the franchise. So for
yeah.
sure,
I mean,
he was very fascinating. I was just kind of like, oh, he's done.
yeah. Poor Gary Mitchell and poor Kirk for once again losing someone important to him.
Well, if we just made a list of everyone Kirk has lost that was important to him, we would have like a top 30 list.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, you brought up a really interesting point. Like, I think he was a good friend of Kirk, but he's not like the same kind of friend as Bones. Like,
Yeah.
I don't see Kirk confiding in him like Bones. I don't think he'll give as good advice as Bones. He's more like a fun friend than a reliable friend, shall we say? Yeah,
It's like your college friend
exactly.
that you went on adventures with.
He's essentially that. He's an
Yeah.
academy friend. Yeah. So, who is your number 6?
Well, keep in mind, I didn't have your condition of the films.
Of course.
My number 6 is Spock's father. What can I say? He really only has one appearance in the original series, even though it feels like we've seen him a million times. We
Mhm.
have, in fact, seen his actor before in the original series, playing a different character.
Yeah.
But there's something about this character in particular that the actor Mark Leonard brings like a gravitas to. And I mean, one, he's being Spock's father, you're probably going to sit up and pay attention, but just like I said, the gravitas that the actor seems to bring to the character just sticks with you. Now, I mean, I'll talk about Amanda later, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Him in particular, he's supposed to be like your idealistic Vulcan. He's dignified and fully in control of himself and supposed to live peacefully and be a pacifist and do everything he's supposed to do, but at the same time you see through the cracks.
Exactly.
Because guess what? He's it turns out Vulcans can have family problems too. And so that just makes him more interesting, right? You see that he's not exactly diffident to his son, but they are not on good terms, and he's in a bad way and actually needs his family. And so, that in itself makes him a very interesting character because he's almost like rigid, too rigid in his reactions to his son and sometimes even to his wife. And so you don't really see that he can, beneath all of that, stiff Vulcan dignity, that he can be a bit softer and appreciative if someone saves his life. I,
Yeah.
I think when I first time I watched this episode, I was like, how much of Spock is in his parents? Like, how much do you see of Spock in his parents? Like, how much would he have been influenced? And you see that, well, maybe Spock is a very, like, stiff, dignified Vulcan because he's like his father, but not so much. Like, some of the softer sides from him probably don't come from Sarek, and this is just
Yeah.
fascinating to me.
It's true. It is fascinating. I mean, Sarek is a fascinating character, and he didn't just come back in the movies. He even came
Yeah.
back in the Next Generation. He came back in the animated series. Um, a lot of people were very, interested in Spock's family, and yeah, Sarek is a great character.
We were very lucky that Mark Leonard got to play him for so long in so
Yeah,
many different shows and even sort of show the evolution of Sarek. I think when he first showed up people just would know why is he so like cold shoulder to Spock?
and then
and then people just wanted answers, but it could have been done in such a way that you went, "Oh, I hate that guy." I hate that character. He's so mean, like, or
yeah,
he's not soft enough with his human wife, and why does he even have a human wife? And you could have just taken the route of he wasn't done well, but his character was done in such a way that you grudgingly respected him and you wanted to know more about him.
yeah,
I could probably go on forever, but I'll stop there.
yeah. No, I agree. He's a fascinating character. There's a reason he came back so many times.
Yeah. What's your number 6?
My number six is, well, you mentioned Merlin. I took another character from the Mirror universe, Mirror Spock. Yeah,
Yeah.
Mirror Spock. I think the most interesting thing about Mirror Spock is how similar he is to regular Spock. Like,
Yes.
you just see him and you kind of wonder, in a world where everyone seems to be like completely insane, how is he so normal? Like, I mean, how did the Vulcanists maintain their logic, philosophy in a world that is so different from the world we're living in? The universe, the series takes place in. Um, just yeah, I like him. Well, he kind of created the whole evil twin as a bird kind of fan. Um, he's just an interesting character, and um, as we later learn, he himself doesn't come back, but as we later learn, his presence had a huge effect on the trajectory of the Mirror universe.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just really enjoyed him. I wish we got to learn more about him. And yeah, that's it basically.
He's my number 3.
Mm,
I put him as
yeah.
bearded Spock. Bearded Spock, I mean, who isn't a fan of him?
Of
I
course.
would dare to say that pretty much everyone was as accepting of Mirrorverse Spock as they were of regular Spock for all the reasons
Yeah.
that you stated.
Yeah.
He's fascinating, to coin a term.
Yeah.
You would have expected he would have been as ruthless or vicious or, um, like really as cold blooded as his co-workers or colleagues in the mirror universe, but like you said, he's just not. And is that because he is Vulcan and Vulcans just stayed as neutral to the changes in their society anyone could be, and yet somehow still made it work? I don't know. Um, but he's purely fascinating. I agree. I think he's the reason why Mirror Universe is popular, and people tend to either make their characters in a way like as similar to their Prime Universe counterparts, or they make them completely opposite in the way
Yeah.
like Mirrorverse Kirk was to regular
Good.
Kirk.
Yeah. I feel like his presence, Mirror Spock's presence, kind of elevated the Mirror Universe because it would have been so easy to have Spock also be evil Spock.
I mean, he had the beard.
He had the beard, and he was also okay. With he was okay with torture and killing,
Yeah,
but he had a level of nuance that I think made the Mirror Universe more compelling. Like
yeah.
I said, I think he made the universe more compelling because it wasn't just like a cartoony "everyone is evil" universe. It was like a serious universe where people were different for a reason.
Hmm.
So yeah,
They were not stagnant in that there was potential to
exactly.
change their positions in the way that people do, you know, in every universe, right?
Yeah,
You're on one side one day and on the other side the next day for reasons.
yeah,
Yeah, he's such a good one episode character.
yeah.
Such a
And
good
of
one.
course, Leonard Nimoy is great as usual.
Oh yeah.
So, what's your number five?
My number 5 is probably the reason why I come back to watch this episode so much, and that is Dr. Richard Daystrom
Hmm.
from The Ultimate Computer.
I think he's my honorable mention.
So the thing about Daystrom is he's like the genius of the age, right?
Yeah,
He's akin to like the Albert Einstein, right? He invented amazing computer systems, and unfortunately people seem to think he had his heyday, and he suddenly comes back with this computer system that is basically like an artificial intelligence called the M5. And what we see through like the progression of his character is he's not a bad guy. His intentions are not malicious, right?
yeah,
But due to his own need to return to some of that glory of when he was, like honored for his genius, and also because he's convinced himself he's doing it for the greater good of mankind, trying to replace people with artificial intelligence to reduce like people dying on the job, and because it's so risky to be a Starfleet officer. He ends up creating something in a manner that basically makes it a threat to humanity instead.
yeah,
And for me, he's that epitome of a scientist or an engineer, or basically someone who is so smart and intelligent, and an innovator who is can create something that really changes the way we are as a society. But he goes that one step too far and doesn't recognize when he does that, and that he's like put people into a position where they're threatened by what he's created. And unfortunately, it ends up at the end of the episode, he's going to be put into like a mental rehabilitation facility, which is a nice way for saying like a mental institution,
yeah,
because his own complex it resulted in him creating something that almost killed a bunch of people. Except for that instability and inability to recognize when the line had been crossed, which he did eventually get there. He's just so fascinating because it's like it happens.
Yeah.
People invent things that get used for terrible things. I think back to
Yeah.
like the hydrogen bomb, the atom bomb, right?
Yeah. I think it's interesting because I think it's a little relatable.
Yeah.
He's not just trying to relive his glory days. It's just that he reached his what he thought of as his peak so early in his
Yeah.
career, and it's like, how do you top that? And he felt like he was under this pressure. He had such a brilliant invention so early in his life, and he didn't know what to do next, and he was just reaching for something, and he was so desperate.
I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the truth is he in trying to strive to do more and to like top himself, right? To do more
Yeah,
than he's what is already considered like an amazing contribution to the scientific age. He ends up in a way like sort of paving the way for artificial intelligence
yeah,
for science. It's just that what he's tried to create and backfired,
yeah,
unfortunately. I mean, that happens. People invent things with the best of intentions, and they just don't turn
yeah,
out the way that they expect.
exactly.
Um, and I feel like even though people probably pitied him, the N5 didn't work, it almost killed a bunch of people. Oh, maybe he's got some problems. They still respected him too. Daystrom is a word that is repeated throughout the franchise, right?
Yeah, his contribution. No one ever thought of him any less because
Yeah,
yeah,
because he tried to achieve more and then didn't really succeed.
yeah,
Um, I just find him so
exactly.
fascinating. I would, if he was well enough, I would definitely sit down to a dinner with the guy and be like, "What makes your brain tick?" Like, because geniuses like that, like, they don't think the way other people think,
Yeah,
which unfortunately, like I said, can lead to some of the problems that happen. They're people to be celebrated.
yeah,
So, anyway, long that was a long way of saying I like Dr. Daystrom. And I like the way the actor pulled him off.
yeah. The actor was good.
I don't think we see this actor again in the original series, but he always stood out to me as bringing that real passion of an inventor and that almost manicness of someone who's just too smart to express what he knows in words. I get why Spock was fascinated by him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, my number five is what you mentioned him before. You said Mark Lennon played another character before
Mm-hmm.
he played Sarek, and I chose the first Romulan commander.
Yay.
Yeah, we never learned his name, unfortunately. I think
Mm-hmm.
I chose him for very similar reasons to why you chose Core, in that he is a very good antagonist. He is, a match for Kirk in any way as a captain. He and Kirk have very great chemistry, even though they barely interact. You can kind of feel like that if they did, they would have extremely good chemistry as enemies.
Yeah.
And the fact that he pulled it off again, he pulled it off without interacting with Kirk. Like maybe I think they exchanged like one conversation at the end, but throughout the whole episode, we only see him on his ship with other Romulans reacting to the maneuvers Kirk is pulling. And we see Kirk reacting to the maneuver he's pulling. And we see them kind of almost read each other's mind. They're so similar.
Yeah.
And it's such a fascinating thing to see, this kind of battle of the minds. Which is, it's not just a battle of the minds because they're using actual ships and stuff, but it is essentially a battle of the minds.
It is. He almost made my list. I went. I loved that guy that Mark Leonard played before he showed up as Spock's
Yeah,
father. Yeah, we never do get his name. A lot of people consider that like the first time we see a Romulan.
yeah,
He's credited with that, but actually, I think they said technically speaking, the guy with the helmet is like a, his like second in command is the first Romulan we see. So I was like, but the first Romulan you really remember and that stays with you is him. I
Yeah,
agree. Like he's an honorable mention because, and I attribute this to Mark Leonard's acting,
yeah,
but
that too.
it is purely a battle of the minds, and it does remind me a lot of the way that Kirk and Core interacted. I feel like this Romulan commander, if he ever met Kirk in person, like Kirk did with Core, they would could sit down and have a conversation without actually getting into a physical fight. It's a battle of the wits.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think it's fascinating. I think I like him more than Core. He's more memorable
Hmm.
to me than Core because the interaction of Core, while they had a lot of chemistry and they were very fun to watch, also felt a little bit petty.
Yeah.
Because I mean they were on the planet with the Argonians, right? How
Yeah, the
the
Arganians.
yeah, the Argonians, and the Argonians are like kind of like these disapproving parents, like looking at those children, kind of having their little bickering fight, and they're like, okay, you stop that now.
I think that's what I liked about it so much is because not just the Klingons were petty, but
Yeah, the humans are petty
the
too. Yeah,
humans were petty too. They just like
yeah.
Kirk kept trying to sneak around and do some tactics and like he thought he was pulling whatever on the Klingons and of course like he's like, oh, you're definitely you're definitely like a man in charge. I
Yeah,
don't believe you're just a traitor. I don't trust men who smile too much. Anyway,
yeah.
they just saw
So
right through each other, and I think the Romulan commander and Kirk could see through each other too. It's why it was
yeah,
such a close battle.
yeah. But I feel like if the Romulan commander and Kirk interacted, it would be less, sniping and
Oh
passive
yeah,
aggression, and more, more respect. Actually, I think they would have respected each other more.
yeah. I always consider the relationship between the humans and Klingons spicy.
Yeah,
They're spicier.
yeah,
But anyway, that's a good one.
yeah. So on to number four.
Well, now that you are talking about Romulan commanders, the other unnamed Romulan commander,
Yeah,
who poses as also as a love interest for Spock from
yeah,
the Enterprise incident, she is my number four. And I had to go double check that we never heard her name.
yeah,
I was like, oh, that's right. She whispers it to Spock. Like, she's like, I have a first name, right? um, there is something about a strong female captain or commander who takes no prisoners um,
yeah,
in doing their job and who is unrepentantly ambitious and unrepentantly like themselves. She has no qualms about stating, I'm a Romulan and Romulans aren't like Vulcans, even though we have similar ancestry. And her passion is just something that stood out to me. I get it. She's hot for Spock. I mean, like who
yeah.
wouldn't be, I guess.
A lot of women can identify with her. Yeah,
And I actually did read that Gene Roddenberry wanted them to have more sexy interaction. I think Spock was supposed to like kiss her all across the shoulders, and instead Leonard Nimoy was like, "No, I don't think so.
yeah.
That's not
It's not
very
very Spock.
fitting." So they ended up going with the Vulcan or like the hand touching, um, which was a good call.
Yeah,
But she comes in. She obviously is very attracted to Spock from the beginning. She's also very fascinated that he's a Vulcan and that they're similar to Romulans. But at the same time, she doesn't take her eye off the ball, if you know what I mean, when it comes to
yeah,
what her job is and dealing with, an insane Federation captain and then dealing with his quote dead body.
yeah,
Taking the ship into custody, those things. So
yeah.
I
I
just
agree.
like her.
She's a good character. She's
Yeah,
my number two. She's
yeah.
number two on my list.
She would. I think she
Um,
would have been higher on my list, but I don't know. I mean, she could have very well been higher on my list. She checked all the boxes for me. It's like the fans liked her so much, like you really could have brought her character back.
Yeah, if it was in the third season, they would have brought her back, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, she is just great all around. She's a great captain. She's charismatic. She's not afraid to say what she wants. She's great. She's just very fascinating to see. She's enjoyable.
Hmm. She owns her sexuality and owns her command.
Exactly.
Like I said, is unrepentant about both those things. I'm in charge.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, I was just, this is really great.
She is a really great character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your number 4?
My number four is Garth of Izar.
Oh.
Yeah. It's fun because we pick different character for similar reasons. I picked him for very similar reasons to why you chose Daystrom,
Hmm.
but he's from the flip side. Like, what happens when someone who was so great loses it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to me because we keep hearing about all of his past exploits, and we see this kind of tragic figure, this shell of a man who used to be, one of the most admired people in the Federation. And he retains none of it.
Hmm.
He's barely aware of where he is. He keeps coming up with these crazy notions. And I think it's fascinating to see, the kind of way a hero is just a human at the end of the day. He's just a person. He he's fallible.
Yeah.
He can break down, and at the end we also kind of see him, getting better. But and I think it's very interesting at the end that kind of Kirk admired him so much after he's been through the entire ordeal with him. He's like, he's not that he loses respect. He's just kind of, he kind of. I've seen my hero fall down.
Yeah.
He has this kind of
Yeah.
expression.
That episode for me is a very, it's about mental health.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Which is not something that even in the 60s people wanted to address
yeah,
so pointedly. I'm with you. I think Garth is, I thought he was very fascinating that whole episode.
yeah,
He didn't make my list, but I'm really glad you put him on yours because he's definitely worth talking about. And that, like you said, you see a great captain, and like you said, he's human, and humans at some point break down. It happens.
yeah,
Whether it's a mental disease, a mental, like a cognitive disease that reduces their mental capacity, or it's just poor mental health, or it's a result of trauma. We see that again and again, I think, throughout the original series, but never so clearly as that entire episode about the downfall of Garth.
yeah. And yeah, for that reason, I think he's fascinating. I kind of wish you got to see his kind of reaction when he learns, of what state he's in.
Yeah. Wow, that's a really good one. So my number 3 was bearded Spock.
Yeah.
So let me hear your number 3.
My number three is T'Pring.
Yeah.
Yeah. T'Pring she's such a fascinating character. Um, we see her only once, and yet she is like the star of the fandom. Everybody talks about her all the time. Because, I mean, she's the fiance of Spock. And it's not like they chose each other. It was kind of decided for them. But I think a lot of people were kind of curious about the woman who rejects Spock. If the woman commander kind of was into Spock, the Brink outright rejects him. Um, and she has her reasons, and her reasons she kind of explains them, but I think they're still, she doesn't tell the whole truth, right?
Mhm.
It's not just that Spock is, well, no, that was her main reason. She was also in love with someone else, and let's face it, she probably has some notions about Spock of being half human and hanging
Yeah.
around humans all the time. Um, but yeah, but she is fascinating. She outsmarts Spock, which is also interesting. Um, she basically pulls off a gambit where whatever she does, she wins, and she won at the end of it. Um, and yeah, she's smart. She's fierce. She like the Romulan commander. She also went after what she wanted,
Yeah.
just in a more subtle way. And yeah, I think she's also kind of a little bit ruthless. You know,
Yeah.
Vulcans are all peaceful and stuff, but she's like, yeah, I don't mind, kill your friend, whatever. So yeah, I really like her.
That's a good one. T'Pring, I had this internal battle between T'Pring and T'Pau.
Me too.
And I ended up picking T'Pau as my number two.
Mm.
And I'll tell you why. T'Pau is obviously an older Vulcan female. She's like an elder of the Vulcans, which is probably like their most honored, respected. It's like the wise man or wise woman of a race. She is basically the one who's officiating the wedding between T'Pring and Spock. The actress who plays her brings such a gravitas to that role. I mean, it's even her accent, right? That Viennese accent. And just the way she looks sitting on her little throne, and she comes in style, and but
She's
then the thing is, you would think, being an elder of Vulcan, she would be very like stringent with the rules, and you can't have outsiders interfering, and yet she accepts Kirk and Bones to stand with Spock. In a sense, like, you wouldn't expect her to be accepting of bending the rules a little bit, but I think she goes on to surprise people. You even find that once the Federation realizes that Kirk has gone off course to Vulcan, she actually makes an excuse for them, right? Oh, I called them here. Don't worry about it.
I mean, it's not an excuse. It's kind of true.
It is, but she could have sent the Enterprise
Yeah.
on their way.
Yeah.
She sort of backs them up. But she uses the power of her position to do that, because it sounds like nobody's going to gainsay what T'Pau says.
That's true. Yeah.
I just find her fascinating.
She's
I
fascinating.
think because she was that Vulcan matriarch. That's the reason why she came back in other shows. She
Yeah,
was,
I mean, yeah.
yeah, she was. I think she was in Voyager, at least mentioned in Voyager. I think something about the Doctor looking at some historical like hologram, but then she was in Enterprise, right?
Yeah, I don't remember her in Voyager, but I do remember her as a young woman in Enterprise.
As a young woman in Enterprise. So there was something there about like the foundation of her character that made it worthwhile to build her back up, in at least in the Enterprise story. And something else I learned that was interesting was T'Pau made such an impression on the actress who played T'Pol in Enterprise. Uh, the actress kind of modeled T'Pol after her.
That's interesting.
She said she was just a fan of the way the actress who played T'Pau presented herself in that Amok Time episode. And that's what she wanted T'Pol to be like, to bring that kind of dignity to her role. I was like,
Wow.
go
That,
for it.
yeah, that is very interesting to learn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really was a struggle. I had like T'Pring and T'Pau. Like, do I do them both for number two? Okay, and I was like, well, no, let me just pick one. And so I ended up picking T'Pau. For all the reasons you stated, T'Pring is also a great choice. She is not what you would anticipate would be what you might think a Vulcan
Yeah,
female
a
would
woman
be
would be
like.
like.
She's as nuanced as any human,
Exactly.
and it's very interesting.
Yeah, like I said, I myself struggled to choose between T'Pring and T'Pau, and I settled on T'Pring because I felt her characterization was a little stronger in the episode, and she
Yeah.
left more impression. And she left more impression on the fandom too.
Yep.
Before we go to number ones, you know my number two, it's the Romulan Commander, but before we go on to number ones, second Romulan Commander, the female one.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Do you have any more honorable mentions that we didn't discuss yet?
Okay, I'm just looking down my... You might laugh at this one.
I love laughing.
The Gordon Captain.
Oh!
Listen, he doesn't check all the boxes, but he checks the one where he leaves an impression on the fans and that they just love the Gorn.
Who doesn't?
They want to dress up as the Gorn. And okay, people maybe thought it was funny that Kirk was fighting a giant lizard. But when you take a step back, you think, wait, that he is actually a character. He could speak. You know, he wasn't just like attacking Kirk like a wild animal. He was strategizing on how to fight him. And it just made the whole fight scene that much more memorable.
Yeah.
So the Gorn Captain, because people know who he is.
That's okay, because I was tempted. My honorable mention that I didn't say is the Vorta.
Yeah. You know what? I thought about that one too. That's a good one.
The Vorta, she's just great. Everybody loves the Vorta. She is a character. She doesn't have a name because Vortas don't have names.
Right.
But she is a very good character. They talk to her, somehow they manage to. She's just a mother who wants to protect her kids. And she's very reasonable when you stop hurting her and her kids. And yeah, she's just great.
My other honorable mention was Natira, the High Priestess of Yanada, the planet that was a ship. I put her on here because she's kind of that classic role of this society thinks one thing about who they are and where they come from, and then everything is like upended when they find out the truth, right? Yeah. And then they have to acclimate to their new truth. That is, I think we see that theme many times in the original series and other shows. But I think she takes it the best. One, she's already a leader of her people. And up to that time, she's been following the words of the Oracle. I think, when she learns the truth about where they come from and what they're trying to do, she owns that. She's like, I'm going to put my personal happiness aside, being married with McCoy, staying with McCoy, in order to lead my people to, the whole reason why we're here. To lead my people to accomplish what, our race set out to do. I admire her for that. And also, who doesn't like a woman who likes bones?
I was going to say, and she's Bones' only love interest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never forgot her.
Yeah. She is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just another example of a ruler who is, willing to adapt and continue to lead their people to their calling or whatever it is. I think that takes a lot of courage.
That's true.
I think if, some people have been in that situation, they would have just been like, I'm out. This is too much for me. So anyway.
Yeah. So, number ones. Can I guess yours?
Yes.
I think I know
which one what mine is.
Yeah, it's Amanda, isn't it?
It is Amanda. How can Spock's mother not be number one? Everybody loves Spock's mother.
Because she has another appearance.
So, she does only appear in that one episode in the original series. But you're right, she is in the films.
And in the animated series.
We've got the whole Discovery thing where they reprise the character. Both Spock's parents get like an actual storyline. But all that aside, just that one episode, that first appearance of Amanda Grayson, she is very compelling. Who is this woman who married into basically a entirely different culture that is supposed to be very unlike the way humans operate and humans live. And she seems happy. She's the dignified wife of an ambassador, and she clearly loves her son. Likes to tease him. Like, she's unrepentantly human, but also respectful of her husband's culture and her son, who is of a hybrid of two different worlds.
I think she's even made more interesting by her later appearances,
Yeah.
because we later learned that she's like, when she married Sarek, she kind of agreed to take Vulcan culture upon herself.
Yeah.
And raise their kids in the Vulcan way. But then in her episode, she's kind of sick of the Vulcan way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And it may be, and it's almost like maybe she's a little burnt out in, putting up with her husband being such a stubborn Vulcan all the time.
Yep.
Like, can't he just speak about his feelings and talk to his son? And she's just like a mother you would expect, and yet you might not have thought that's the way she would be because she is Spock's mother.
Exactly.
You might not have expected her to be just as human as she is. I don't know how to explain it except that I think because people were so fascinated by her, she got to come back.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. I think everyone was just fascinated to see where Spock comes from.
And I mean, come on, she teased her son in front of his friends. Like, it's just classic.
Yeah. She told us that he had a teddy bear.
When I think of like some of the other mothers in the Star Trek franchise, the other one that I really like is Deanna's mother, right?
Luxana. Yeah.
There's something about just a funny mom.
That's true.
Your friends are kind of like, oh, your mom's pretty awesome. But then poor Spock's like, Mom, don't embarrass me. Yeah. It's so classic. It's a classic role. But it was done, I thought it was done really well.
I agree.
Yeah. I like Amanda Grayson. What can I say?
Yeah, Amanda is great.
All right, so please tell me, what is your number one?
Can you guess?
Can I guess? Well, is it Christopher Pike?
No.
Okay, because
Also, I don't consider him. Yeah.
because I wasn't sure if he could be considered like a one episode character if it was a 2-part episode.
Yeah, me too. I was like, I don't know, and I'm not going to touch it.
I put him, like, I had him on my list, but then I took him off because I'm like, well, maybe not.
Also, I think in the new track they give him a more strong characterization anyway.
Gosh.
It is I will say, you may not even remember this character. She is stuck in my brain. It is a she. She is stuck in my brain. I really, really like her. Even if her episode is not my favorite, I really like her.
Is it the lady from the Cloudminders?
No.
Dang it. Okay.
Though I liked her too, but for other reasons.
I thought she was a little too handsy with Spock, but I did like her.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, no, I don't think I can guess. Soda, I'm really on tenterhooks. Who is she?
It's Dr. Miranda Jones from Is There in Truth No Beauty?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. That's ironic because I wrote the Medusan Ambassador list and I completely skipped over her. Mm-hmm. Please. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. She is just fascinating. First of all, I think she's one of the very few female characters who is not a love interest. Like, at all. She's introduced for an episode. She's not a love interest of anyone. She is such a strong character. You know, she has a really full characterization. She is teasing Spock. She is ambitious. She actually rejects someone who tries to hit on her, and it kind of causes a lot of drama. And we see the fallout of it. She knows what she wants. She knows what she's about. She knows her limitations, and it annoys her.
Yeah.
She is blind, and she gets around using this neural network kind of net that she wears. but it isn't, it isn't a full compensation for having eyesight, and she knows people underestimate her for it, and so she's very, very jealous of her position. Like, she knows it's not a it's a precarious position, and it can be taken from her at every moment. She's just a fascinating character all around. I think she's extremely well written, extremely well acted. Kind of, I think, kind of an accident.
Yeah,
I'm not sure they really set out to make such a good character in this one episode.
I agree with all those points. I think maybe just because of the episode itself, she gets overlooked, but it is a really good episode. Yeah, I mean, what can you say? Like, I don't think I realized until now, just like she is one of the very few women who doesn't also play a love interest. Like, for example, the Romulan commander.
She was Spock's love
She
interest.
was awesome, but she was also a love interest.
Yeah, and I really think she's fascinating because she's allowed to be flawed, and I also don't think that the episode is like, oh, you're flawed because you're a woman, which is it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of a thing with the episodes because
Yeah.
60s show. But no, she's flawed because she is blind, and she is aware that her position is precarious, and she's aware that her job can be taken from her, and she's kind of afraid of that. And she's very desperately holding on to it, and she also doesn't want she doesn't want a romantic relationship with someone to jeopardize it. But when she rejects the guy goes crazy about it.
Right.
And he puts her in this position regardless, because she's also not very she can be in control of her own destiny, basically.
Right.
um and she's so aware of this, and she's mad about it, and it's great. I think she's just a character.
I think that's awesome. I'm actually really sad I missed her on my list because I kind of gravitated towards the episodes I think that I thought about most.
Yeah, I mean, that's understandable because Is There in Truth No Beauty is not like an episode that, like, it's not one of the best episodes. Like, compared to the rest of the season, it is a good episode
Yeah.
because, third season. But yeah, it's not the greatest episode, and so that's why I think she's often overlooked. But yeah, she is a really, really good character in a pretty average episode.
Yeah, I actually cycled through a number of female characters thinking about them, and there were several I struck off the list. One because they were love interests of somebody, and it didn't handle it well. So like, do
Yeah,
you remember Dr. Helen Noel, who was trapped with Kirk in the
vaguely.
vents,
Yeah,
in like maybe it was the Dagger of the Mind episode? I don't.
yeah, yeah,
She's psychologist of the ship. She's supposed to be a professional, and yet she's obsessed with the fact that she kissed Kirk at a Christmas
yeah.
party or something.
It was ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Strike it off. What's her name? Now I'm not even remembering her name. I had it written down. The Khan love interest.
Oh yeah, the
Her.
redheaded one.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like, for instance, she seemed like she was a professional. She's a historian. She's really into, certain periods of Earth history, and but then it just goes sideways when she becomes obsessed with Khan.
Khan.
And when he tells her you're being weak, you're being a weak woman, she just accepts it. And I go, wow, this is such a terrible look for women.
Yeah, honestly, you know, the episode starts with Kirk hating her for absolutely no reason.
Yeah.
He really just hates her for no reason at all. She's just doing her job. And then she kind of ends up justifying him, which is kind of annoying.
Another one which I remember was Mira Romaine, Scotty's love interest,
Oh,
the young woman, yeah, who was
which episode?
um, was it the Lights of Zatar, the
Oh,
one where she's possessed
the
by.
most forgettable episode in the
Yeah,
series, honestly.
but I never forgot that she was like his love interest, not like the ones that he killed in, or he supposedly killed in
Poor guy.
Wolf in the
Poor
Fold.
guy.
That was cruel of me, but I mean, she could have had the potential to be a smart, intelligent, upcoming junior officer, and then she got stuck into the
Yeah,
love interest role, and I don't think she ever broke out of it very well.
yeah.
Which is unfortunate because, and Kirk's had a number of love interests. A lot of them just crazy or forgettable. You
Yeah.
obviously, I mean, you picked like Edith Keeler is like the number one love interest of Kirk that was competent
Yeah. Exactly.
on her own and not so starry eyed for Kirk. She compromised herself. I did. I wrote down a number of people, but at the end of the day, there were a few I struck off. So, what was there anyone that like you kind of considered, kind of like Pike, but then just said no, doesn't
Well,
belong on my, even on my honorable mentions?
I mean, like I said, because of the appeared more than once, I did strike off Sarek and Amanda and Khan. Um, aside from that,
There's one that I think I need you to weigh in on.
yeah,
I put the Guardian.
the Guardian. Oh, the Guardian of Forever.
Yes.
Hmm.
I was like, wait a minute, is this against my condition for like self awareness?
No, I think he's a self-aware creature.
I meant self awareness being like meaningful with a meaningful interaction with the crew. Because at the end of the day, the Guardian's just, I open the gates and you go through, and I give you a warning.
Yeah, I can see that. That's debatable. I didn't get a lot of character from him. That's true.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting, but
I know,
he's
but
not really a
imagine
character.
if it had like a parent scolding a child, like you really don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Think twice before jumping through the portal.
Hmm.
Yeah. There actually are a number of sentient beings, non-corporeal beings that probably could have been given a little more intelligence and been made interesting characters. One that comes to mind that unfortunately just I don't think didn't do it for me was the cloud
Hmm.
entity from the Cochrane episode.
Zephram Cochrane, yeah.
Zephram
Actually,
Cochrane.
I was thinking about Zephram Cochrane himself,
Mm-hmm.
but I realized I don't really care about his character in the episode. His most interesting parts come from his appearance in the Next Generation movie.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
That's true. But the Zephram Cochrane and the cloud that was in love with him,
yeah.
the cloud
Um,
being,
the Cloud Being, I think the Cloud Being is a character, but like I kind of I did kind of strike off characters that are too aliens
yeah,
because we already had that list, so
yeah.
I didn't even consider that one because I'm pretty sure it was on my aliens list.
I guess even though I didn't, I think actively strike off like aliens. In a way, I did because you can see like not really none of them are on my list.
No. Well, the Gorn is an honorable mention.
Well, yes, the Gorn is an honorable mention. He's special.
He's special.
Because even non Star Trek fans know about the Gorn.
But yeah. Um, yeah, so that's my list.
And that is also my list.
Yeah.
I'm actually really happy that you thought about Matt Decker in
Mhm.
basically for the same reasons that I did. If I had to say he's another one of those like overlooked characters,
Yeah.
he's definitely one
I
of those.
really because I think I mean, the episode he's in is very popular, and um, the captain from the motion picture is like his son or something.
Yeah, I think Will Decker, whatever his name is. Yeah. Is it funny that some of the other like commodores or captains that show up in the show are basically not that memorable? They're basically like authority figures that like to challenge Kirk, or the only other one that comes to mind was I guess Commodore Wesley in the Ultimate Computer, but even he was not as interesting to me as Dr. Daystrom.
Yeah, I actually did remember him at all. I remember the guy that came from for the court martial.
Oh, you know what? There is one on my list, and I debated back and forth, and eventually I just decided not to even give him an honorable mention. But that's Carradine or Kodos the Executioner.
Oh yeah, I thought about him, but I don't know.
His story, I was like, in the end, I was like, his storyline is somewhat compelling. It's horrific, but
Yeah,
it's also makes you just want to know more about like what happened. That to me doesn't necessarily make the character compelling. He does sacrifice himself in the end, but did he really show any remorse for what he did? No.
yeah,
So
exactly.
I don't feel he was complex.
Yeah,
He's not like a morally gray character. I mean, obviously he thinks he did the right thing, um, but when I'd say a majority is against you, you are wrong. Especially when it comes to killing people, committing
yeah. I
genocide.
think that's my main problem with him. He's never even shown me story. Like
Yeah,
it's just like, yeah, I kind of feel bad about it, but it's been forever ago, so just forget about it already.
yeah.
Like that's not how it works.
But if they had ever decided to like go into the backstory where you see him as like a pretty good governor, and then this plague comes around and wipes out all the food, and then he has to start making all these decisions, and they just kind of snowball into like the ultimate horrific decision of his, his lifetime, and how that happens, that could be interesting. Sometimes,
Yeah,
like, you have morally gray characters that seem good until they make that one terrible decision. But they didn't do that with his character, and I get they didn't have time, obviously,
yeah, yeah.
because it was more about the plot of his murderous daughter trying to kill off the witnesses. Um,
Exactly.
but there was, I think, potential there, and
There
yeah,
was, but it was missed. Yeah.
it was missed. Wow, if we ever did a list of people who with potential that were just grossly underwritten, um, we could probably make a list there too.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Soda and I have shared with you our top 10 list of one episode characters. Thank you for listening to our podcast. If you want to share some of your choices as well, we'd always love to hear from the audience. And thank you again for listening to another Space Trio podcast.
Bye, everybody.